I am R1 Cameron, and this is The Conduit. All right, y'all. We are here. It is Friday, and as we do on Fridays, we are at the Bainbridge Island Museum of Art, and it is Black History Month. It is February. We will be out here with these two lovely ladies here, Marv and Akuyea. We want to get right into it. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Ladies, how are you doing? Marv, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well today. I'm excited about tonight. Karen and I will be Akuyea. We'll be meeting with a group of young African-American girls and some boys tonight, having a pizza party and discuss topics like Black history and literature. So I'm excited about that. At 7 o'clock tonight, we're going to be meeting at a friend's house and maybe a sleepover if we decide. But however, we're going to be picking up girls after we leave here and have a discussion around Black history and literature.
All right, Akuyea.
Well, hello, everyone. It's been pretty busy. Today has been quite busy. Started off this morning putting together an exhibit for African American footprints on Bainbridge Island. And so was getting some of the artifacts and some of the photos and all of the messaging ready to put that exhibit together. And then after that, met up at Evergreen with some of the artists up at Hilltop, working with the Tacoma Art Museum. And so that's going fine. And Miss Victoria is doing an amazing job at the Tacoma Art Museum, pulling together all of those African-American artists and making sure that they get jobs, that they're compensated for their work. So the work is tremendous. She's doing anti-racist work through the arts. And so she is an art activist at her heart, and she's doing some amazing work. And now we are here with the Conduit at the Bainbridge Island Museum of Arts. And so we'll go ahead and jump right in. So we're here sipping some tea.
Sipping our tea.
Yep. So Marva, tell me a little bit about the importance of literature, especially for early learners.
Oh, well, I like to say that I work with young kids for almost 35 to 40 years in early Head Start and Head Start programs. And one of my goals was to focus on early literacy for those children. And so one of the things I learned through my journey of being a teacher was juicy words. And juicy words are rare words that children usually won't come in contact with. So it's an intentional teaching for young kids. So I would find rare words that they just don't know. And then I will expose it to them. And so then we would talk, I wouldn't just tell them the word for the day, but I would use that word throughout the month so they become familiar with the words. And what's so beautiful now, I love to play Scrabble. And my grandson Zion, he loved words, he loved reading. And what I do with him now is when I find a new word, I write it down and then I'll share it with Zion and I'll ask him, do you know what this word means? Sometimes he's already familiar with it and sometimes he's not. And so we have a discussion around the word called juicy words.
Juicy words. So how important is exposing our children to literature?
It's really important because what research says is that children that come from a family that doesn't have great language,
yes,
or is low income, they say that their learning new words is very low. Coming from a two-party home or a family that is in the business world that's working, their children will have more language than children that comes from a lower income home. And so what we have to do in the community, the children that are in the low income communities, is be intentional. So like I said with my grandson, be intentional about using language and talking to them and making sure you add in those uncommon words that they don't know and use them in a sentence more than one time. So it's very important because we want those kids to excel in school as well. But without that language in in their home environment, it is really difficult. I've seen it over and over again that some kids have great language in school, have big words, and parents that read to their children, they usually have the higher learning level of language skills. Children that are not being read to, it's a lot more difficult for them to understand juicy words or words that they have never been heard of.
Now, tell me a little bit because we're talking about literacy, we're talking about reading, we're talking about education, really.
Mhm.
So, tell me where those barriers is it historical as well as, because I'm trying to understand where the gaps and where the disparities began. And for me, the disparities began when it was against the law for us to read and write.
Absolutely.
And so, talk a little bit about that when the laws don't allow or when opportunity for education is taken away.
Well, I've seen that growing up as a child. Um, was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, and my mother, I have four sisters, and I was second to I was the second youngest in this family. Well, my dad happened to die at such an early age when I was just about to enter my most important grade, kindergarten. Therefore, and my mother became a single mom. Well, my mother didn't read to me. And when I needed to do school, I love school. I think now that I look back, it was just my passion to love learning. But I recall from my mom's generation, she wasn't read to. And my mother only had an eighth grade education at the time. And so for her to be in our home and give us higher education, um, she just didn't understand how important it was. But she made sure that we all graduated and we go to college. So she did have that within her to for us to do better. So I think coming from Ohio, um, it wasn't a high priority sometimes in our school unless you come from again a family that are readers. And so if I wanted to read, I had to teach myself. I was just telling my grandson, I wanted to know how to do division, and nobody in my family was helping me. But I had some type of desire to learn it because I felt bad when back in the day they used to make you write on the board, and you'll be so embarrassed that you didn't know how to do division. So I remember knocking on my next door neighbor's door. There's a young girl in the house named Patricia who was just a little bit older than I was, and I said, "Can you help me do division?" And she taught me how to do division.
Nice.
That's how I learned, but I didn't have that family support because my mother was trying to provide for us.
Well, how does that show up even now? Because I heard you say that you were embarrassed. You didn't want to feel like what was it that you didn't want to feel?
Well, in front of your peers, you feel like you're not smart enough, which goes into self-esteem. And so I had to find a way that I could feel better about myself by asking my neighbor. But today in the schools, I have seen kids that come from homes that are not have a large vocabulary. And those kids usually are those introverts and those shy kids that won't talk. But thank God I've experienced that in my own life. So I was able to read books to them, making sure that I read to every child in the classroom, making literacy a priority in my classrooms. And so I have to say that many of the kids that when they left my classroom, that they did pretty well. But not only that, I was in home activities. And then in my work, I did a lot of programs around literacy. I did one program, Karen, I don't know if you recall, but it was called Daddy, Will You Read to Me?
Yes, I do
Daddy, will you
remember.
read to
I
me?
do remember. Mama, Daddy, read.
Yes, Mother,
Pro-
Father, Read. That's the name of
Yes,
the program. So we would give all the children books.
yes, I got
And
some.
yes, we would give them a book, and we really wanted to make it around the culture of the children. So we had a lot of Native American books. That's when I was actually introduced to so much diversity in reading. So we had books around African Americans. We had books around Hispanic children, and so what the fathers would go home with a book, or the mom. With some, we did mother read too with the moms, and the children would go home with all these books once a week, once every other week. And so they were building a library. And when you build a child's library, then you're going to build literacy.
Yes, yeah. And it's so important. One of the things that we've done, we've created the Dr. Maxine Mims Living
Yes,
Library.
yes.
Tell me a little bit about that, Dr. Maxine Mims.
Oh, Dr. Maxine Mims is one of my favorite people in the whole world. She mentored me many years ago about loving my craft, which is working with children. And I remember one day Karen and I was on the phone talking to her, and we said we had these challenges and this is how we're feeling. And she kind of, I don't know if you know about rebuking, she rebuked us, meaning like redirected us, saying, you two little Black girls.
That's what she said.
She said, you two little Black girls have this gift to give to other children. And you need to go out there and do it well.
Yes.
And she also taught us that we grew up in church, Karen and I and our children. She also taught us that you don't separate
That's right.
the curriculum, church and school, you combine them together. So if you're teaching on a lesson from the Bible that has some math skills in it,
Yes.
she said you use that way of teaching math to the children that you are teaching on Sunday.
Yes.
That was my, I can do that. And so anytime I'm working with children at church, I always try to figure out whether I use reading or I use math or I use science or I use social study, any type of curriculum that I can use to help them further understanding the Word of God using everyday learning that they learn in school. Dr. Maxine Mims, Living Library. She taught us so much.
Yes,
and
she
so
did.
I'm so grateful for Dr. Mims even today.
Even today, I am a recipient of all of the wisdom and the knowledge that she just poured out like syrup on us.
Yes.
And she imparted that into us. And she really empowered us to go on to higher education. She said, you two little Black girls.
Yeah.
She said, you all got what our children need.
Yes.
And so you have to begin to reach out. You have to empower them. You got to build them up. And what you're doing is very valuable. She said, do you know what you're doing? She said, you are teaching them to be proud of who they are, where they come from. Do you know the power of teaching them about their culture, their tradition, what they bring to the table, giving them new voice and allowing them and their passion and yes.
Speak to their passion.
Yep. She said, get into that passion. If you get into that passion, she said it's a halfway there because that's what's in them.
Yes.
If you can get what's in them out, then you've empowered them to go ahead and to walk in the things that they were created to do.
She sat at the table with Oprah Winfrey.
Yes.
She sat at the table with Maya Angelou.
Yes, she did.
So this is a great woman who's still alive in Tacoma.
Yes.
In the city of Tacoma. And every now and then we is blessed to be in her presence.
Yes.
But Karen, I always tell Karen, you are a miniature Dr. Maxine Mims. Her movement, her desire to wear the headpieces, her desire to speak to the history of African American people. This is a Dr. Mims in the making. So
that's such an honor to even say that. Well, Dr. Maxine Mims, when she first came here from Virginia, what she did was she was at Evergreen State College and she founded the Evergreen Tacoma campus in her kitchen.
Kind of like Mary Bethune.
That's right.
She started teaching young girls school in her house.
That's exactly right. And she used to come all the way to Bremerton, to Kitsap County, and she used to teach in the basement of our churches.
She started a college in our church and motivating our people to go back to school.
Yes.
And I could say she has made a difference in our lives.
Yes,
she made sure that we get back in school and further our education.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. And her 95th and her Founders Day for the Tacoma Evergreen campus is coming up in March. And we don't want to miss that event. That is going to be uh, uh, just an amazing event, because you're talking about almost 100 years old.
Yes, she
And
is.
the wisdom that she walks in, we don't want to take for granted that she still walks amongst us and she can
Yes.
share all that wisdom with us.
Love to be in her presence when I can.
Yes, when we can. And so, one of the things I want to talk about the importance, because we've got these books here, and how important is it to know who your people are?
Very important. Um, Books help kids see themselves, images of what they can be and who they are, and it answers the questions that sometimes a parent can answer for that child.
That's right.
So we want to make sure that in the Living Life Leadership Library, which
Yes.
with Dr. Mims, the founder of Dr. Mims Library, that we have books that speak to the children. Who are your people? Because if you don't know where you come from,
Say it again.
you can go through this world being lost. And so it's important that we do more of speaking to young children about
Yes.
who they are
Yes.
and where they come from. And that's
right.
what we're going to be doing tonight,
Yes.
speaking to our young youth
Yes.
about where did they come from.
That's exactly right. It's important. It's vital. It's life-giving to them.
Mhm.
Because I think that when they're in a lot of environments that don't value
Oh yeah,
their culture, or
understand.
understand even
Mhm.
their culture, I think our young students of color really struggle in those environments.
Absolutely, I see it all the time in the schools. Most of our schools have a small percentage of African Americans, a small percentage of Asian American, Hispanic Americans,
Yes.
Native American. Well, what one group of people did on the Suquamish, they opened up their own school.
Oh, speak to that, Miss
So
Martha.
that has made a great difference in the lives of those children that lives in Suquamish. They have a Suquamish school that they can go to and learn from their people.
Yes.
And their way of teaching is teaching them about their history.
Yes.
So they use a lot of berries, and
Yes.
they use a lot of food items that explain to the children how to create and how to make them. And now they're writing books for their kids.
Oh my
So
goodness, amazing. One of the things we want to talk about, that history of severing people from their cultures and their tradition, because that happened with our Native American children. They were sent off to boarding schools.
oh, and yeah, that history has suffered trauma.
Yes.
So they are working themselves back. They're not staying in the trauma. They are educating their babies
Yes.
so they can have a successful life. A lot of them, when I first went to Suquamish, I worked there, and I recall kids didn't even know what a marker was. And they was at awe. They just didn't have that early learning.
Yes.
And because they placed the program right in their community, they were able to start learning. And now those kids that were babies, they're teachers now. They're lawyers. They have high positions within their community and out over in Seattle. So I'm excited about the tribe, how they took a hold of that, and they began to
Yes.
say,
Yes.
we're going to educate our kids. And they was able to get that funding, and
Yes.
that really helped. And now those kids are doing very well.
They're doing very well.
Very well.
And they are reclaiming their history, their culture, their traditions with
Yes.
Canoe Journey. Talk about Canoe Journey a little bit.
Oh, every year they do a canoe journey.
Yes.
We've been a part of that for many years.
Yes.
But they bring all their tribes together, and they have discussions around
Yes.
their children, around their people. They also do dance. They also make their regalia.
Yes.
They're coming together, and I'm so proud of them
I am
for
too.
making that big change. And they have
Yes.
great leaders in the community. And so they're constantly building their brand
Yes.
in their communities to make sure that their kids are involved in it. And where people used to have that stigma that Native Americans, they all like to drink, but today they're doing really well. They're educating themselves.
Amen. How important is that even for our African American families? Because I want to talk about our history of being the stolen ones. This book here is by Dr. Marsha Tate Arunga,
Okay.
which she went back to Africa and she became a cultural custodian to reclaim and to be able to repair and restore that which was taken from Africans that was enslaved to the Americans. And she caused me to think about my language
Mhm.
because we call ourselves African Americans. But
Yes.
she said, no, you're an African that was enslaved to the America. Yes, you're in the America, but you are an African.
Yes.
You are African. And I thought about that. I said, okay, so we were stolen from our tribes, stolen from our lands, brought
Mhm.
here and enslaved, put in chains, stripped of our culture, couldn't speak our language, couldn't practice our traditions. And so when you have this type of traumatic, oppressive, um, um, destroying of one's culture, what can really happen to you mentally? What's the trauma that
Oh,
comes
I
out of
see
that?
it today. And so, not a lot of kids, but I see it today in kids that are in that environment. And what happens to those kids, those are many of them have behavior problems. They have a hard time with learning because they don't like themselves or they haven't been taught to love themselves. And so I do see that. I can think of I have an image in my mind that I won't say the name of a child that is experiencing this trauma.
Yes,
And the way we speak to him is differently, because even though he has some really challenges, like he does some not so very smart things. I mean, like uses profanity, and he talked about slavery in a negative way. Like there was some cotton in the school, and I was sitting near him, and he kept picking up the cotton. You want to pick this cotton, Miss Jones? Miss Jones, you want to pick this cotton? And so I immediately said, "Tell me about what you talk about in your home."
yes,
I diverted the conversation to some intelligence. But what I learned from him, he just doesn't have that
yes,
intelligence because he's never been taught. So what comes out of his mouth is profanity. What comes out of his mouth is the N word. What comes out of his mouth
yes,
is negative words. He doesn't even like himself. So what the school has been doing it, and myself and my daughter, we've been trying to place the negative with some positives. So that's what happened to
yes.
kids that has suffered that trauma. And then
Trauma.
it goes on from generation
Generation
to
to
generation to
generation to
generation.
generation.
And now today it shows up in the classroom. And one point that I really want to make, Miss Karen
Akuyea.
Akuyea, one point I really want to make to our audience is that if you come from a family that mom may be Caucasian and dad may be African American, what I've noticed through my studies and working with kids is that those children that are male boys have a difficult time in
They
school.
do.
Yeah. I did a study on it.
Okay.
And the difficulty is because they're trying to identify who are they, these
Yes.
black young boys.
Yes. Yes.
And they don't know
am
who
I?
they are because mom is Caucasian, dad is African American, and they both parent differently. So there's a confusion, a mix up in their minds on who am I. So it's important that we that
Yes.
know how to help kids
Support.
and support kids is encourage the parents on some positive parenting, working together, bring more books about like this, who are your people, so they can understand who they are. You have to have those critical discussion with those early learners so they can
Yes.
know as they grow who are they and be proud of both cultures and be proud of both. But those are kids that I notice are struggling sometimes with their behaviors.
Well, there's a big deal with this critical race theory and
Mm.
not wanting certain books or texts or literature in the schools that are very diverse or even challenging some of the colonized literature and structures and systems that are still in place. What do you say to the clapback to all of the dialogue, I would say, around critical race theory and what it is evoking in our communities?
One of the things I think, Karen, you and I
Yes.
had sat down probably about 4 years ago,
Yes.
maybe 5 years ago, we talked about how we can bring more literature in our community
Yes.
by writing our own books. So we had this
Yes.
list that we went to the mall one day,
Yes,
and
we
we
did.
felt God was dropping it down from heaven, different titles on what we can write books around and make a
Yes.
series on
Yes.
African American literature. And so I did try to find that piece of paper, Miss Karen. I could not find it.
It's there. It'll
So
come back
hopefully
to
one
us.
day we will come out with
Yes.
our early learning literature books
Yes.
around critical race theory
Theory
for our children,
For our children.
so that they can begin to have opportunities to touch more of those books. But what I will say, since 20, 30 years ago, we have come a long way. There's more. You can go to the library
Yes.
now,
Yes.
and you can find more books like this. This book right here is by Bakari. Most of you may know him. He's on CNN. And he wrote this book about who are your people,
Yes.
because he know that even being in Washington D.C. and on
Yes.
CNN and all
Yes.
these shows, that there's still a problem
Of course
of
it is.
people, people, adults still learning about who they are.
Yes.
So he wrote this. This is a beautiful book. It's on the best-selling list.
Yes.
That I really enjoy his messages whenever I see him on TV.
Yes.
But we have come so far. There's so many people that is in Hollywood that has the gift of writing, has written books for children. And so I'm just happy about that. So we do have more books that can fall into the hands of our kids about who they are.
Wonderful. And I wanted to feature a little bit about Miss Amina Robinson.
Okay.
And her book is here. We have it on display here. And you'll be able to see. But she speaks about culture, about the tradition, about villaging, all of those in their neighborhood, pulling the community together. What that really looks like, and our legacy of what we eat, how we dance, how we sing. She begins to empower us through the art that she's made, as well as the books that she has written, and all of the wonderful things that she wrote about the valuing of understanding who you are.
Who you are. Well, if you're not in a community that is connected.
Yes. What do you do?
What I did was, when I came to Washington State, I was in a community and it was totally disconnected. I think I was the only African American in my community.
Yeah.
And so what I had to do is create and find places to take my kids to. Yes. Or if it wasn't there, I read literature like Kwanzaa.
Yes.
The gentleman who wrote Kwanzaa. And I began to study his work, and I brought Kwanzaa to this area.
Amen.
And began to do Kwanzaa every year, so my kids would have something they can grasp to, something they can hold on to and say, I know Kwanzaa and how it affects me and how important it is for our community. So you have to go out there and seek as a mom or a dad, rather than waiting for someone bringing it to you. You have to read books. There's so many books now you can read about knowing your culture. There's a book that I read and I brought for my daughters, for their sons, Critical Conversation with the Black Boy. Conversation with a Black Boy. Very good book just to expose my daughters about who their boys are.
Yes.
Raising Black boys.
Raising
Black boys.
So
I think that because I grew up in Ohio and we were community connected.
Yes.
We went to the museum and saw people look like us.
Yes.
We went to the stores and saw people like us. We went to plays and saw people like us.
Yes.
So for me in Ohio, we were inspired to in our communities to be connected. So there was never an issue for me, like, who was I?
Right.
But when I came to the Northwest, I was culture shocked. And I was trying to figure out a way, how can I get back to the East Coast?
You and me both.
I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't see anybody here look like me.
Yes.
I didn't feel loved by people.
Welcome.
And I definitely didn't see community events or books like this around.
Yes.
And so, Karen, you know, our work has been, how can we help our community
You're
and our
right.
children
That's
become
right.
connected in the community.
That's right. And that has been a journey, I would
Yes.
say,
Yes.
for the last 30 years that
Yes.
we've been intentional about going into the school districts and opening up the school districts to be able to have dialogues and have them to understand the importance of equity and inclusion within
Yes.
the school, within the educational system, the importance of engaging cross-culturally to be
Absolutely.
able to understand and build those relationships. And it has been challenging.
Mhm.
I know that you had children within the Kingston School District. And I know you could probably share some of their testimonies, but I can tell you, living here on Bainbridge Island, the challenges were fierce
Yeah.
here. And I got involved in the school district because I didn't want my children to be criminalized. I didn't want them to be racially and culturally bullied. I
Absolutely.
didn't want them to be looked upon or devalued. And so I began to go to the school and advocate for them and became a part of the structure, and
Absolutely.
that they would see someone black, an adult there, that they felt a little bit as if, oh, somebody's here that I know cares about me.
Absolutely.
And the importance of that, especially in a dominant culture where they look around and they don't see anyone, and they walk in a place of either fear, or they try to assimilate,
Mhm.
or they withdraw, or they drop out, or the list goes on, because we're talking about young children that are developing their
Yes.
frontal lobe and
Absolutely.
understanding. Children know when they're loved, children know when they're welcomed, children know when they're valued, children know when they are not wanted
Yeah,
too.
when they're accepted in the school. I have 4 kids growing up in North Kitsap, and as many people would tell you that lives in this community, that it was a difficult challenge for my kids. But what I did, my husband and I, we made it our business, like Karen, is to be a part of the school. I had to get involved. If I didn't get involved in my kids' school, then people would have those negative
Stereotypes.
stereotypes about Black families. And so I told my kids, I remember when I first moved here, in Kingston, my son, who's now is 44, I remember taking him to the 8th grade Kingston Junior High,
Yes.
and he was pulling my hand as I was walking in front of him. He was pulling my hand, saying, "Mommy, please, please, don't let me go to this school, please, Mommy," because we were in Central Kitsap School District, which you would see a little bit more diverse in that area,
Yes.
but here there was none. And as a mom, I said, "I'm with you all the way. We will be the example in this area of African American families, and I'll stay with you, and we will be together, and we'll walk this journey together." And so, because of that, now my son lives over in Everett, and he is a great dad, and
Yes.
he is involved in his kids' life. He just had his older daughter. In fact, she graduates in May. She goes to Clark University in Atlanta, Georgia, and she graduates in May with her master's degree. So that's what literacy does. As a mom, I broke those chains and said,
Yes.
we can do better. And now my son is developing children that go to college.
Wonderful.
So that's what happens. But we end up in the school, and we stayed, all 4 of our kids, and we got them involved in extracurricular
Yes.
activities. But I was there every month of February. If the school didn't know how to do a Black History program, I'll do it.
Yep.
I will make it happen. If they didn't know how to celebrate Martin Luther King's
Yes.
birthday,
Say.
I did it. If they didn't have books to read to my children, I'll do it. And even when children that came to the school that may have been adopted that was African American, I made sure that if they came into that school and their hair didn't look right, I said, "Can I talk to you about ways to do African American hair?" And they
Yes.
were so open.
Yes.
And so I felt like it was my job and my responsibility
Yes.
to help. And that's what we did.
And that's what we do. And that's exactly what we do. So, as we talk a little bit about the importance of having within the school, because we know that throughout many of the school districts, the numbers of African Americans within those dominant cultures aren't there. How important is it for them to have a Black student union or a
Well,
club?
I recall, again, the work that we did probably 10, 15
Yes.
years ago, empowering our young children in our church to participate in the Black Student Union.
Yes,
And so I do know that there were some of the schools did develop
they
a
did.
Black Student Union
They
club.
did.
But however, now they're not existing anymore. And so Kieran and I just went to one of the schools in Bremerton to
Yes.
encourage a Black Student Union group
Yes.
again. And I think they got it.
Yes, they did.
And so we have to stay in front of that. As parents, it's your job to advocate. If the school is not providing that special ingredients such as culture for your child, that's your job. And my job as
Yes.
community activists.
Yes.
But what we like to say is that you have to get involved, because it does help not only the school, but it helps the students. And
Yes.
sometimes the teachers just don't know what to do. I've heard that.
That's right.
I don't know how to.
Well,
I
they
don't know what to
haven't been
do.
exposed.
They haven't.
You know, and you don't know what you don't know. And if you've never been taught, or you've never been in relationship cross-culturally, it becomes kind of what I would say, you kind of just hesitate,
Yeah.
and you pull back, and you don't know where to get in, or where to fit in, or how to go about doing that work of equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Absolutely. I recall when I worked at the Suquamish tribe for almost 13 years. And I remember when I first went to their preschool program.
Yes.
And they had their people all came and sat and watched me and talked to me. They wanted to know what I'm going to be teaching the children.
Yes.
And I remember feeling so intimidating by these group of elders. And I didn't know how to teach Native American children. I said, I don't know how to teach Native American children, but I do know how to teach African American children. And what I don't know, I'll learn.
Yes.
And so I began to participate in their canoe journeys and all their tribal events, so I can understand how to help their children become early educators.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the Kitsap County Black Student Union, led by Miss Jewell Shepard.
Oh, yes. Jewell was one of our students way back.
Yes, she was.
20
She
years
was.
ago. And
Yes,
now she's
she was.
she's doing that job now.
And she is now stepping into that role,
Yes.
to preserving and helping and supporting our young people
Thank you, Jewell.
across Kitsap County.
She is.
She's saying, if they're not allowing that to happen in the school, how can we support that happening in our community, and mobilizing and organizing in a way that offers opportunity for African American student from a Bainbridge Island School District, or a Kingston School District, or a Akuyea School District,
Port
or
Orchard.
a Central Kitsap School District, or a Bremerton, or a Port Orchard School District, to be able to get them the support and have opportunities to go on tours to Black
Historical
colleges, tours to do leadership, to go and explore culture, heritage, to travel, to do all of these things. And so we've got to create. One of the things that I heard, if it's not happening, then what are you doing to create it, to make the change?
Absolutely.
So I think it's important that if we say we're going to support the students, that we do some visioning and get very creative on how we would support students to be better and do better, and create those opportunities for them to make other choices as well. Yeah.
Well, Kieran, I recall a family that you worked with throughout the years.
Oh, yes.
Kieran worked with this family. They were very disorganized. The mom was a single mom. And she wanted her kids to have the same opportunity as other
Yes.
young people in our church have those opportunities. Kieran worked with these girls for years, and boys
And
for
boys.
years. And there was a lot of people wanted to throw them away. Even some of the
Yes.
Black families in our
Yes.
church said,
Yes.
you know, why are you working with them?
Yes.
This girl is not even,
Yes.
I won't say worthy, but she just was a girl that had a lot of trauma. But Karen continued to work with her. And then she went to college.
Yes, she
You would never
did.
have thought this child would have went to college.
Yes, she
But not
did.
only did she go to college, her sister, who was a year older than her, went to college.
Yes, and
Not
her.
only did she go to college, but the younger sister saw the example,
Yes.
and she's in college out in
Yes.
Western
Yeah,
University,
that's
Western
right.
Washington University. But what Karen did was stuck by this family and exposed them
Yes.
to the language.
To the language.
And exposed them took them on different trips to DC and
Yes. Yes.
Colorado and all these different places.
Yes.
So they will
Immersions.
be able to understand that there's another world out here
Yes.
and you can make it and you can have the same
You
opportunities.
can.
She took them to so many trainings, leadership trainings,
Yes.
and she encouraged them to village their voices.
Yes.
And I think this family is doing great.
Yes, they are.
Because Karen did not give up on them. And so I was excited about that. And I looked at that family today and I'm like, they made it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They did it. But that's the type of work you have to do,
You.
Karen.
That's right.
You have to
That's
stick
right.
by them and
You
you have to
have to
expose them and take them on trips.
Even when it's challenging.
Even when it's challenging.
You have to stay the course.
And never throw anyone away.
Yeah. We don't have throwaways.
No.
We don't have throwaways. And because we don't have throwaways, we always make sure that we're presenting an opportunity
Yes.
and encouraging them to
Yes.
come in and be a part of.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's why we're going tonight.
Going tonight.
We going tonight because we're going to do some table talk tonight.
Yes.
We're going to do some table talk and we're going to chop it up with our young people and encourage them, you know, because they're having a hard time during
school.
COVID.
Yeah, COVID has really displaced a lot of our students.
Oh my gosh. And
Mhm.
so many of our students have just said, oh no, and dropped out of school.
Mhm.
Oh no, that's unacceptable. We've got to get them back. We've got to be able to say, you know what? Sometimes school isn't for everyone, but what are you doing? Are you going to a training,
Right.
you know, technical school? You know, are you going, what are you doing? And because we're concerned about their health and well-being.
Yeah, a lot of our students doing this camp, talking about this COVID experience we're all experiencing, was having trouble at home. And so even my grandson, I had him a couple of weeks and they would turn their computer on while they were still laying down in the bed, and they wasn't really learning a whole lot. So I work with my grandsons and grandchildren on making sure that we were engaged. But also, my pastor's wife, Dr. Lillian, she created a virtual learning class for African-American students. It was 12 students that came to that program during that time. And I was overseeing the program at the time.
Yes.
And I just got some really great news. One of the students that was in the class loved science. I noticed that he had a desire to do science.
Yes.
And so, but he was failing in some of his classes because it was just laziness, you know, got out of practice and learning. And so I said, you have a gift in science.
Yes.
So we would do science projects. Even when after he got done with his work, he became the science engineer in the class.
How great is that?
And he loved it. And then we did the juicy words. Every day I would put a rare word that they don't know.
Yeah.
And they would have to tell me what that word means.
Yeah.
Or I would have a group of books on the table. And what I would do, they used to say this about Black kids won't open up a book.
Ah.
And so what I did, Kevin Hart mom did this to him. She put money in a book. And he needed money, and she put the money in a book. And he said, Mom, why are you not giving me this money? She did give it to him, but it was in a book.
It was in a book.
If he didn't open the book, he would not know.
The book.
So I started out with those children.
Yes.
And so they would come in the morning and they would look for the money in the book. I didn't do it every day, but there were days that I did put money in a book.
Yes.
But when they had to also read it. They couldn't say, oh, I found money. If they opened the book and they found it, they had to read that chapter.
And tell me that book.
Yeah, but that was just a way to get them to love learning.
Yeah.
And a lot of the kids did not want to learn. One little boy said, I just don't want to be here. I don't even like school. And you know, my church is near, Marvin Williams Center is near a homeless area. And I was showing him, do you want to be homeless? and he didn't care. But now today, if you've
Yes.
seen him,
Yes.
he's doing great. And then the other little boy that was a science major, he ended up going back home with his mom.
Yeah.
And I just got news that he is doing excellent in school.
Excellent in
But the
school.
goal was to continue to provide those early learning literacy words.
Yes, that's right.
And they became the kids that would come in the morning and say, Ms. Marva, I found a word. Do
I
you
got
know
a
what this word means?
Ah.
And so we really studied the word ideology, any
Yes.
words with that ending. And so they would look every day and find words. And so they became the experts. And that's what we want our kids to do, is to have that love for learning. 'Cause
Love for learning.
when you have a love for learning,
literature.
nobody have to tell you to get up and learn. You get up yourself
right.
out of that bed,
That's
because now you
right.
got to love. But you have to create that appetite in the children for learning.
For learning. That's great. And now we're going to transition about this gentleman here. You know who this gentleman is?
I recall seeing him.
Tell me about. Yeah.
I know he was not born. He was very a leadership role
Yes.
in Bremerton.
Yes, he was.
And he came by here via Navy.
Yes, he did.
And I know that you is not letting his legacy die. You have kept his legacy
That's
alive,
right.
and I think you got something signed from the city,
Yes, yes.
and that you want to name different places
Yes.
about him. So,
Well, this is Henry Dick Turpin. He served, he was an officer, served in the military, in the Navy, served on 2 ships, served during World War I and World War II. 2 of the ships were sunk, the Maine and the Bennington, and he saved his commanders, shipmates, and everyone. And when I found out that he didn't never receive his Medal of Honor,
yes,
he didn't even have a headstone. They didn't bury him properly, and he lived in Bremerton on 4th Street and died in Bremerton. And so it saddened me that here he was, a hero in our community, and was being erased and being devalued.
And a lot of our history is like that, unless someone or somebody bring it back to life.
Yes.
And you have done that with this gentleman. And I know you've done a lot of work in the last 5 years to make sure that he's not erased from the Bremerton community.
That's right. And not only he, remember in 2015, you were a great part of that at the Admiral Theater, teaching voting rights.
Oh, yes. To children.
To children.
Yes.
How important was that?
I do that with my kids. And I've done that with my kids. Whenever I would vote, I would take them with me to the voting booth, which was in my Kingston community, to let them know how vital it is for them to village their voice. Whether the person they're voting for win or lose. I did that with my kids. And then I started doing it in my early Head Start classroom. We would vote on what book do we want to read. Do we want to read book A or book B? And then I would give them the opportunity to vote. And when they got done voting, I would give them a voting stickers. I vote today. I voted today. So I would do that every year in my classroom to vote on different things, such as books or what type of food would they like to cook in the classroom, to motivate that, encourage voting within their communities.
Yeah.
So yes.
So it is very important. We've done the celebration of hidden history.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Healing our land, healing our history, weaving history. We've done In Search of Identity. We've done so many things. We've done the Myth English Project.
Oh, I remember that.
Yep. And we've done the reading programs over the years. And you tell us about the STEAM that you've done. I mean, so many different ways to be able to engage our young people in literacy.
Science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And I always tell Karen, when I was starting to promote STEAM, most people called it STEM.
Yeah.
And they took the A, which is the art part, out of the word. And I put it back in because art, a lot of our kids have that artistic background to be able to focus on the area of art, whether it be dance, whether it be cooking, whether it be writing,
All right.
whether it be art. So we put it back
Poetry.
in. I recall, Karen, one summer, this book,
Yes.
Street City Book, we did the kids created a book such as this.
Yes, they
My
did.
grandson loved it.
They
And
made
so they
their
was
own
exposed to
book.
that. They made their own book.
Yes,
And it was based on this author.
that's right. And we came to BIMA here and we worked with a famous artist called Mr. Kennedy, Amos Kennedy. And he taught them about printmaking. He taught them about
Yes.
how to create things and create messages with printmaking. And that was amazing. And we also went to the barn and
I
we learned
remember.
how to make our own books from scratch.
From scratch.
From scratch. And so, you know, when we talk about exposing our young people to opportunities, we've got to get outside the box.
Yeah.
And be able to empower them. And so I'm just so grateful for you, Miss Marva, coming and spending this time with us here and talking about the importance of our culture, our history, our heritage, you know, the footprints of African Americans here in
Yes.
Kitsap County and our history. So our history will not be erased.
Right.
And so thank you again for coming and visiting again with us and sipping tea.
Sipping tea. Well, I love sharing my experience. Hopefully that there's people like you and I, which I'm sure that's
Many.
out there that take on this challenge. It's not always easy. And
Yes.
you spend time away from your own family
Yes.
to promote and to encourage other families to learn about who they are.
Yes.
And so we just continue to do this work as long as we got our hands and our feet. We will continue on.
Yes.
As of tonight. We're with
Yes.
these beautiful 12, 13, 14 children tonight and talking about, again,
Yes.
literature and where they are and how they're feeling and
Yes.
celebrating them as well. We've done that about a month ago.
Yes, we did.
Miss Karen and Miss
Carrie.
Carrie and a lot of other equity women.
Equity sisters.
They did the most amazing thing that I had never witnessed. It was about 12 girls.
Yes.
And they came over to the house and they had fine plates and spoons and napkins, china, and they had a beautiful dinner. And then Karen spoke into each one of their lives and gave them a beautiful, expensive Bible. But the other part of that was the girls opened up a box and every girl received a crown. I'm not talking about any kind of crown, a beautiful crown to let them know that you are the queens. And then 2 weeks ago, they were celebrating, the equity women were celebrating my birthday. And I opened up my box and I received my first crown. And so the other day I was a little sad. I was just feeling kind of discouraged. And all of a sudden I looked over there by my bed and I have my crown sitting right on my light. And I looked at my crown and I perked up and I said, I am a queen. I am a senior queen. Girl, get it together. Get it together. And it made me smile because we should feel like that as people. We should feel that royalty within ourselves. And it
Yes.
helps you to be motivated. So
Yes.
yes, the Equity Sister did that for these 12 girls, and we're meeting with them again tonight just to follow up and
Just to
see where they
follow
are.
up.
And they all have crowns and different crowns.
Wonderful. Before we wrap up, I want to talk a little bit more about Dick Turpin on the 24th down in Bremerton at the post office.
Oh, yes.
It'll be a complete renaming. It will be the
Oh.
congressmen and all of the officials, the military. Everyone is welcome to participate. They will be doing the post office renaming ceremony for Henry Dick Turpin.
And Karen, that was part of you.
No, that was part of our community.
Our community, but
Yes.
you stayed the course. And I know also we are part of the art
Yes.
in Bremerton, and we're in the process of creating a mural that focuses on Quincy Jones.
Yes. Yes.
And his story because he's from Bremerton.
yes.
And so that will be painted sometimes in the future.
Yes.
But right now we're just trying to figure out all the logistics, and we're part of that.
Yes, as well. So thank you for visiting with us and sipping tea again today, Miss Marva.
Thank you.
And we thank Mr. Marwan
Yes.
and the conduit for all of their wonderful work that they're doing.
Yes.
And so again, we just thank you, and we thank BIMA for hosting us for this Black History Month community celebration that will happen on the 27th of February.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.